All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So today, I'm back here again with Mayday. Introduce yourself to the people, Mayday.
What up? It's me, Mayday, everyone's favorite artist and Sonic opinion haver.
Yes.
Um,
So today we're going to be picking back up from where we left off in the last video, going a little bit more into the discussion around the IDW characters. So this is a little bit more of a bugbear on my part than on Mayday's. So I'll go ahead and talk about what the general theme for this franchise for the discussion is, and then I'll hand the mic over to Mayday. So so a while ago, I know a lot of people remember the complaint about this franchise having like too many characters from like random critics online back to 2010s. But honestly, for an adventure series, the Sonic franchise is actually incredibly small for has an incredibly small cast for adventures cast. Like if you go to similarly running similar franchises that have been running just as long, so that'd be like stuff like Pokemon or TMNT, especially One Piece. If we're getting like named characters that have been main and supporting, they can get anywhere to like get into anywhere near the hundreds. But Sonic, I think, barely ends up getting to like 30 for characters that have been like regularly appearing in like any of their stories outside of like Archie. So I am all for the idea. I say all this because I want to be clear that I am 100% for the franchise adding new characters. However, while IDW has been doing that, I've had problems with them doing it for two reasons. One, they seem to be adding in characters really just the idea of just introducing a character for the sake of having one idea that they kind of had going for it, but without any real consideration about what they're trying to go for with this character. And secondly, this kind of feeds it. And secondly, they seem to just be adding in more and more characters without any real idea about who the main cast is supposed to be. They knew they wanted to add another girl, so they ended up doing that. But now it's gotten to the point of like, there's not a clear idea about who the story is supposed to be about, who's the central protagonist, who's the story is supposed to be developing. Because and we can get into this later, but I can make a very strong case that it's not Sonic. But that's so the main thing I want to try to criticize here is that while I am up for a franchise adding new characters to the cast, it needs to figure out who the central main characters are supposed to be first, and then the central main characters are supposed to be, and whoever they end up adding, whether it's for main cast, secondary cast, whatever, they need to make sure that they are developing them path. They need to introduce characters that are beyond just having one random character quirk. All right, so Mande.
okay, so I wrote down your 2 points, and I think it might be good if we just go through them one at a time. I mean, there's two of them, so
Sure.
just one, and then we do the other one. So, if I'm understanding your first point correctly, you're saying that your problem is that a character is kind of introduced, they kind of have their gimmick, and then they're thrown into the story, but there's no plan or direction of what you can do after they've kind of uh, I don't want to say blow their load, but they kind of just
Um,
they kind of do their main idea, and then that's kind of it. There's nothing more after that. Sorry, go ahead.
Worse. You're on the right path, but I want to really emphasize a little bit more. It's not just that they don't have anything else for them to do; it's that they're explicitly left with nothing else to do, and almost in a no-win scenario. Like that pretty much applies to all the characters, some more so than others. But the general problem I have is that they'll introduce a character, but then once they end up having like their one story beat, is like they're kind of let there's nothing left for them to add to the story. They don't really have to the story to work with any of the other characters to even really justify their existence being in the story, other than just hey, we need a new character, so and you're here, so you might as well just stay. The biggest one of the not the biggest offender. We'll get to the biggest offender, but one of the offenders I have about this in particular is Whisper. So people complain a lot about her being in complain a lot about her for when she was introduced about like having all this trauma about like being the last surviving member of her group, being betrayed by one of those members and dealing with the frustration and anger towards them in the first place. And then once that all got taken care of in the miniseries, we moved on. But then once we got but then when she was left after that, what did we do with her? Well, first we end up traumatizing her again with the whole with the whole with the whole zombie virus, especially when it comes to her only friend in the story, Tangle, getting infected. Then we end up, well, main friend. Then we end up kind of just leave her on her own. Then she ends up just deciding to just go off and do her own thing. Then gets her ass beat by Surge, and then just comes back in. Then we end up doing the urban warfare arc where we again have to invoke her trauma around the androids, and then we have to invoke her trauma again by now having basically Mimic Gaslighter as Duo, and at some point that ball's going to drop again. She's going to have to deal with this stuff all over again. So we're still doing the same stuff over and over. It's just about constantly reinvoking her trauma. If she's not just here to suffer for someone else's character arc like with Surge, she is just here to constantly keep redoing that same conflict over and over again with Duo, with nothing else to add for it. She doesn't really bond with anything well. She doesn't really seem to have anything else going on with her character arc. She doesn't really do anything to contribute to the story, to any other story beats properly. She's just kind of here. So it ends up bringing the question of, other than just she's a cute girl that you guys like, I don't get why she needed to be here, but needed to be here after a mini story, because she doesn't add anything.
Okay, so what I want to do, I think a good way for me to respond to this is that I want to look at. I wrote these down, so I hope I got them all. I want to look at every time that Whisper's trauma is invoked, and I want to make the case that there is a forward direction here, that each of these cases are different. So
hold up. I'm not arguing that there's no differences. There are obviously differences. One time we end up the first time it was traumatized, she was dealing with Mimic directly. The other time it was her having to deal with the shadow androids. The third time now
no. That's not what I mean. Those are aesthetic differences. What I want to talk about is, I think that her character is different. That she's at a different point in her journey at these.
I know. Like, again, I'm not saying you can't make a case like there's like zero progress. I'm saying we're doing the same. I'm not saying like there is no change or anything. You can make a case that it is a little different for how there are differences between them. Like, like one point it was like fresh off the gate. The second time, now she's in a better position, has her friends to rely on, and now she's while she ends up having to deal with the other source of her trauma. And then the third time, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm not saying you can't make a case there's no forward progress. I am saying,
what's the problem?
The issue is not that there's no forward progress. My issue is it's the same thing. It's the same theme over again. That only really exists for our own silo. It does not tie her back into anything else. It doesn't tie her back into anything else. We don't really seem to have her actually. And honestly, while you can make a case that is still about progressing, it's still progressing over the same conflict over and over again, instead of actually pushing her to do literally anything, pushing her to go out and do literally anything else. Like, yes, you can make a case that's like, oh yeah, she's slowly dealing with the same trauma over again. But it's like, I'm not saying you can't do that. There is a case for that. My problem is, how does this let's start with one of the main problems. One, how does this benefit literally anyone else's story, especially anyone that's not on this picture?
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. So the point that I wanted to respond to is that characters, they have a gimmick, and then after that, they kind of spin off with no direction. They kind of stand around for a while. Okay. The way I interpreted that is that after a character is introduced, after they do their one thing, after they're introduced into the story, they kind of just don't do anything anymore. They don't have forward direction. And that's kind of it. That's the way I interpreted that.
Okay.
I don't think that's related to how their story affects other people. That's a separate point, I think. But how they change in their own story, that's kind of, I felt like that was the main core of the question, or the main core of the problem that you introduced there. So
sorry. Let me sorry, I just want to take wording on this. It's not, well, no, I didn't sorry if I gave you that interpretation. That's not what that
No, you're fine.
is applicable to some of the other characters. That's not the central problem. That's not the.
Wait,
I
wait.
wouldn't
Okay, if
say
that's
that applies
applicable
to.
to other characters, I want to talk about that. So, which character you think, and then we just focus straight directly on this thing. And okay, do we agree that this is that is my interpretation of your question correct? That characters just they do their gimmick and then they have no direction after that. Is that correct? Was that is one of your problems, not your all of your problems. You have another problem where characters are kind of in a bubble and they don't necessarily affect the outside world. That's another problem, and I will write that down. And I
Mhm.
want us to go back to that, but I want to focus just on the no direction. So if you're thinking of a character, I want to talk about it, and we can talk about it.
So
I
that's
want you to
not
give
okay.
me.
So let me
Go
see if
ahead.
I can. Because here's the thing: it's not the no direction thing is kind of is a bit applicable, but that's not the exact wording I ended up using.
Okay.
Not the exact wording I ended up using because I'm not saying you can't make a case that no. Because the thing I want to try, because the thing that I want to try to avoid is the exact conversation that I had with Tails Tube a couple of years ago, where I ended up going in to talk about some of the problems I was going on with IDW, but I'm trying to remember the exact name of the person who was talking to me. I was talking to, but they kind of more or less lean back, try to extrapolate and interpret several things in order to try to bring that back around to justify their to try to justify that point that technically is true, but does that was technically true, but didn't really just the core point I was making.
Can you be
So
specific?
let's
I don't know
yeah.
what you mean by that.
So I want to be specific. Let's be specific about them.
Okay.
So when we were talking about this when we were talking about this on Twitter,
Mhm.
we ended up one of the things that you end up saying about for your rebuttal is you don't think that making a main cast is going to essentially isn't going to automatically fix all of IDW's problems. I agree with you. That is adding a main cast is not their biggest issue. I would say is one of the contributing factors to their bigger issue. But the reason I say that the story needs a main cast is because it's one of the ways that you can make sure that the story has focus. That you can do a bunch of different things, go and do random premises, random ideas all the time. But the core thing that the story is supposed to be about and is supposed to be your audience's focus and emotional investment is supposed to be the main. Is supposed to be the main cast because this makes sure that your story has that no matter what other crazy premises you're doing, you're always keeping something in mind for what the story is supposed to be about and exploring. The reason why I
I
end up
agree with you. That's an
right,
advantage of having a main cast. I agree. But
right.
go ahead.
The reason why I say this here is because a lot of these characters really exist, really do exist, and to a certain extent, you're not wrong for what you said about my point here. Is that they more or less are starting to exist more and more in not just in their own silos from each other, but explicitly from the game cast because they're not more and more from the game cast, and it's starting, and the story is shifting more and more up to being about the conflicts and the emotional issues that these characters are dealing with versus the characters that that the franchise is supposed to be about and the reason why we're all reading this in the first place. So when it comes to these guys, when it comes to the issues I have with these guys, it's not just like they are adding stuff in and taking the focus away, but more that a lot of their conflicts are they're not just repetitive, but
Self-contained.
not just self-contained and repetitive, but honestly just kind of pointless, self-contained, and repetitive, but don't really add anything of value to what don't really help anything other than just make this comic come off even more scatterbrain and unfocused. So
Okay. Oh, okay.
okay,
Okay.
so if just to focus on one thing,
Okay.
let's just focus on the fact of how a lot of these characters really don't have much going for them that tied them back into whatever the central premise should be about, which is either dealing with Eggman or Sonic's adventures. And even on their own, their stories are also kind of stagnated for either stagnate or have problems even function problems progressing the characters beyond that one gimmick. And that's where the problem comes in. So
Okay. So that's the second point. I wrote that down. So okay,
mhm.
that's cool. We can do point two. That's it doesn't tie into the main cast and the main characters. That's the
Right.
way I wrote it now. All right,
Yes.
cool. So can I speak to that?
Sure.
Okay. So I think I would agree with you. They do, you would probably acknowledge they do have some interactions, but a lot of them have not. There was one moment that I liked with Sonic and Tangle. I thought that was really cool. But I would put another example like Whisper and Silver, right?
Hmm.
Because, and I think you brought that up in our last conversation.
I did.
It kind of seemed like when those two first met, when he was like, I want to be a part of your team, this can be cool. It kind of seemed like that was gonna be some sort of budding relationship or something. And they did sort of go back to that when Silver joined the Diamond Cutters. They didn't talk about their conversation or anything like that. But I think that was them trying to kind of, what's that, pay off that moment.
Hmm.
But what ended up happening is that Silver, they got gaslit by Mimic or whatever. And then Whisper said, I gotta stick with my team, which I think is good for her character for ways I can explain, but that doesn't matter. But I think it's bad for her relationship between with her and Silver
Hmm.
because I think we would both agree on this. I'm not sure if that's ever gonna be explored again. I hate to say it, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I hope they do, and I hope I'm wrong. But that's the feeling that I get. So,
All right.
um,
Agreed.
yeah.
Oh,
Let's see. So, yeah, yeah.
I thought you had a rebuttal in there.
Oh, no, not really. I could think about it, but for now, I think I tend to agree with you. I don't know if this would apply to Surge, though.
Oh
Okay,
no,
let's
Surge
say
is the main one. Surge,
you think so,
Surge, Kit, and
dude.
Tangle are the main ones I'm talking about here. Like a couple
Oh
of
yeah,
weeks ago, I like no, it was last week. I ended up making a thread talking about how that one shot in the newest issue where after Surge ends up chasing off Sonic dressed up as a bad guy to fuck up the race,
mhm,
and everyone in the audience is cheering her on and she's praising. I'm like, this is not a good thing because best case scenario, this is a sign that they're really just doing whatever they can to just make her a good character without really keeping in perspective about what her issues are, or were or worse, they didn't really think. No, that is actually the worst case scenario. Best case scenario,
Wait, can you repeat that? The worst case
yeah,
scenario. Sorry.
actually forget the best case, worst case. My main point here is I didn't like that frame because that really does imply really does show that they're not thinking through how they want her to be a good character. They just kind of want her to be a good character, to be on the side of the heroes, and they're not thinking through about not only how her character is supposed to work, but what she would even add or contribute to being in the good to being on the good side. Because as because usually the whole thing around these kind of brainwash manipulated characters that were working for the bad guys and then end up going for the good, done properly, they usually have some type of personality traits and worldviews and beliefs that allow them to understand what they were doing was wrong in the first place, and that's what leads them to go either I want to redeem myself for all the bad things I did, or fuck being bad, I want to go ahead and start working for the good guys from now on, or hey, these guys are ride or die with me. I No matter what, they stood by me no matter what, so I want to stand by them now, and plenty of different ways. Surge, they don't really seem to have thought through. They don't really seem to have thought that through because she doesn't really have any core principles or beliefs. And core principles or beliefs. Because right now, she's not considering or liking the idea of being good right now. If we're taking this scene at face value, the thing we're supposed to take away is not that uh, she understands the value of being good. She's learning the idea that if she is good or shakes off bad people, she gets positive adoration, which feeds into what her main problem has always been as a character. She never really follows or as punk and edgy that she tries to come off, whenever the story really matters, whenever she has to make important decisions, she never makes them. She always follows the lead of anyone else in the room. Like that was what was the whole theme with her with Starline. That was the whole thing with Clutch. Hell, she even did that with Kit when they ended up beating up Starline. And now we're getting the exact same thing where she's just following the loudest voice in the room, which in this case is the audience. So what issue, like even without getting into cast chemistry, which is already going to be which is already not looking good, what is she supposed to add positively for being on the good side other than just she's another cute edgy girl?
Okay. All right. So, so I wrote down three things you said. I think I'm gonna go with the second thing because I think that's the most interesting, and I think that I actually agree with that.
Okay.
Even though I like Surge as a character, I would argue it's one of her strengths. So you said that Surge has no core beliefs, and I would, I think I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that in the first part of her arc, I think that Surge is powered by nihilism, pretty much. I think that um that is a big part of her character, and that's what creates her contrast with Sonic. Because when she has her sort of existential crisis, when she
Mm-hmm.
figures out that Starline's been gaslighting her entire life or whatever, she's like, "Oh no, it's me against the world," right? And she like crashes out, and then she realizes, "Okay, I need to just destroy everything." See, it's not just nihilism; it's hedonism too. She's, I agree that
It's
she's
just self-destruction.
incredibly, yeah,
Yeah.
she's incredibly reactionary.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a part of her character. It's acknowledged. She
Mm-hmm.
literally says to Sonic as she's like being like messed up by the dynamo cage. She said Sonic is pleading with her, Surge, please, you have a choice. You don't have to do this anymore. You don't have to fight me. And she says, I can't remember her exact line, but she basically said, I don't have a choice. And she is like doing this sad smile or whatever, and she sort of resigns to the idea that she has no agency. So, and then since then, she's kind of just floating around trying to do whatever feels good, right? She like fights Sonic, or um she fights Eggman or whatever, Metal Sonic, whatever it does, whatever it takes to like fill the hole inside of her. Um, yeah, so I agree. I think that they are trying a big part of her arc is her, and I think I think it's going is her going from a person who doesn't really believe in anything besides her own pleasure into focusing like what she really wants, because she doesn't know who she is right now, right? All she
Mm-hmm.
knows is that she has nothing, right? So I think that as she begins to notice the things around her, as she is given objectives by people like Clutch, right? I think it's gonna be leading her into forming her personal philosophy that exists outside of Starline and outside of like Eggman and Sonic and people like that, and it making her even more of a threat. So you get what I'm saying? I think
Well,
so. I would agree with
here's
you
the
that
thing.
she
No,
needs some.
here's the
Yeah.
thing. That's what should be. If they were doing that, I would give them praise. I would actually give them a little bit of compliment about that. But that's the reason why I don't like. That's the reason why I criticize the cheering scene, because that's supposed to be one of those scenes where she's establishing what her core belief systems are. But what's the core belief that she's supposed to get out of that? That the only core belief that you can get out of that is doing good things uh, gives her positive adoration, which is an incredibly shallow way to view about what it means to be doing the right thing.
Is that not
And, even, and
accommodated by what we know about her? That's her hedonism.
I
She
don't. No,
knows
no,
that that'll
no,
make
no.
her
We're
feel
not. No,
good,
no, no,
right?
no, no, no. I don't care about whether it's the same character or not. That is so not my point. My point here is not that you can't make a case that this is what she's always been. If anything, that's the reason why. That's one of the reasons why I don't like. Oh, I don't like how her character's been written up to this point. My problem is it's a shot. Is what am I supposed? So if that's supposed to be the case, that her main takeaway is doing good things. It means that she's going to get positive, that she's going to get positive iteration for people. This is still giving to the same problem of she's just doing things because someone else is telling her to, or because of the reactions of other people. She doesn't have any core beliefs, core perspectives, which fucks her up. No matter which. I don't care if you try making her a villain and a hero, heaven forbid, an anti-hero. She is fucked no matter which way. If that's supposed to be the mindset that you go for, she's fucked no matter which way you try to take her. You can't make like even ignoring power scaling. If she doesn't have any core beliefs of how she works, she can't work about who she is or only goes off of what she thinks feels good. That means that she's gonna suck as a villain because even again, ignoring power scaling, this means that she's never going to be able to have a proper discussion or proper thematic conflict with any of the other characters because she's not doing she wouldn't be doing any plans or doing any destruction because she actually for her own perspective, own beliefs, or her own beliefs that could contrast the other characters. She's just doing it because she just wants it for half a second, which is a shit thing to have for because she just wants to feel good for 5 seconds, which is a shit thing for a villain and not shit for a villain for a one-off and absolutely awful for someone who's supposed to be reoccurring. I don't know, like if she's supposed to be on the good side, she's absolutely fucked. I don't even know what you would even do with that when it comes to having her work off the rest of the characters. Like everyone else here, for all the problems I have with them, for all the problems I have with the Restoration girls, they're at least supposed to be heroic for their own reasons. If you end up bringing in a character who's just going, I want to be good because I like getting praise from other people. What the fuck? Like, how is that supposed to be beneficial working off of anyone else in the cast? That's too shallow for her to work off of. And honestly, anti-hero and doing the anti-hero thing would be worse because those characters live and die off of their motivation. So if you're just having a character show up just to be edgy because they feel good, that is an easy way for them to end up getting jobbed worse than Shadow does on a regular basis. So
Okay, wait, can I say something?
sure.
Okay, okay,
I know. Sorry, that was a
you
lot.
are
Sorry.
a very good speaker. Okay, and no, seriously. Okay, so I want to fight back. Okay,
All right, no, go for it. Sorry.
I need to say you are speculating. Okay, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of this is speculation. So it makes it difficult to talk about because we don't know what it means, uh, or where it's going. We know
Well, no.
I feel like wait, hold on, please.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay, no, you're good. You're good. So we don't know where it's going. It could
Mhm.
be the case that she could be, and I would probably be disappointed with this too. I would agree that she's gonna be a hero. She's gonna be like a quirky girl, like, huh, praise me. And she's like an anime girl or something like that. I agree. That could be where it's going. Or it could be something that I think we would both agree is compelling, right? This could be just another data point showing that she is just this reactionary person who just like floats around, and maybe she comes to realize the futility of that. Maybe she becomes aware of the fact that, oh, I'm just seeking all this time. I thought I was like living for myself, but I'm really just uh, I'm still being yanked around by the audience, by the world, by Starline and Clutch and all these people. And like maybe she looks inward and she's like, what do I want to do? Right. And maybe she becomes even more formidable. Maybe she kills Clutch. Sorry. Okay. This is me speculating, but I'm just saying we don't know. Okay.
Here's
So
the
it makes
thing.
it hard to talk about. All
Here's
right.
the thing. While you're not wrong by saying I'm speculating, but the reason is I'm not speculating just out of nowhere. I'm speculating. No, I'm ultimately making my point based off the evidence that we have. Like for example, I brought that up during my thread about like, oh, the whole thing about her seeing the audience getting praised in the audience that could be viewed as a bad thing later. There is no reason to think that's supposed to be a bad thing because there's nothing about that scene that shows that that's supposed to be bad. When you usually end up doing those kind of scenes where it's supposed to seem like it's a positive thing, but you want to make sure that you establish the audience that no, this is a bad. You want no, this is a bad thing. This is going to be a bad thing for a character. You usually have someone at either one, you have someone reacting to it, going like, "Oh no, she's doing it again," or you end up focusing on this character's face and you end up showing how how like it is having a negative impact on them by usually like giving them bad eyes, making them look a bit manic, where you were meant to go, oh no, this is sending her down a bad path. Like I hate I can't believe I'm going to give a compliment to this. Hell of a Boss actually did this relatively well a couple of episodes ago, where they end up having one of their characters who's supposed to be so excited about being able to go on to this date and be able to tell this person that they love them and want to get into a relationship with them. But they establish at that scene that it's supposed to be a bad thing by showing how showing their face looking manic and tired and the bags in their eyes and looking incredibly stressed and freaked out, because it is supposed to be a bad thing that they are this latched onto this character and putting this much expectation on what's about to happen. Now, those two episodes are shit. It made me stop watching the show, but they did that. But they showed that scene correctly as it's supposed to. There's nothing here to say that that's supposed to be a bad thing here. So I'm not saying I'm not speculating about where they're going to go. My thing is I'm covering all of the major options that they can go to without just going completely random, because I'm by looking at the evidence that we've gotten up to this point. And the only way that this could end up being good, and I still would call it shit, it would still call it shit, is that you basically just end up having to rewrite the character all over again. And I don't
Wait, how so?
Remember, what you said right now, like what you said earlier, was that this is supposed to be a blip, like this is just supposed to be a data point. That this is supposed to be a data point for her to start establishing what what her worldview is, what her personality is, and we're going to start just building stuff more and more later. And it's again the same problem I had with the same problem I brought up with Belle a while ago as well. Why are we spending a year on a character just to establish that they have to establish what their personality is? That is not establish what the personality and worldview is, and for what? Because again, unless you just completely overhaul or add in completely different things that change what I said, which would defeat every other issue she's been up to that point.
Wait, why does the amount of time matter? Why does it matter that it took a year?
Because that means that we're spending all this time on developing this one character when we could be literally just for this one character when no one else is benefiting from this.
Wait, okay, wait. Hold on. So you said that they would have to rewrite Surge in order to make her satisfying. They would have to rewrite her into a different character. I feel like this is a separate point from taking a lot of time focusing on her in order to the detriment of other characters. I feel like these points are separate. So I will write both of them down as 4 and 5.
Okay.
I just want to separate one.
I'll make sure I stick on that.
Yeah. Oh, geez, what was your point again? Oh my goodness, this happens every time. I forgot both of I separated these onto 2 points and I forgot both of them. Hold on. Let's see. Surge is okay. They would have to rewrite. Okay, let's see. And have to. Sorry, while I'm writing, you can just kind of. I don't know if you have something more to say.
I'm trying. No, I pretty much finished my thought about Surge, but my main thing, the main problem I have with her right now is that unless they end up pulling a complete wild card with her character and just adding completely new traits, she's kind of screwed no matter which way you go. She's kind of screwed no matter which way you go with her, because she can't. She's too shallow to be an anti-hero. She's too aggro and principleless to function properly as a good character. And she's already shown to get her ass handed to her too many times, and is honestly too vacuous to work as a villain. So there's no good place to really put her.
Wait. Okay. So I wrote a section called Future. So I'm gonna try and be brief. I'm gonna draw a straight line to where I think she could be going. And I want you to stop me where you think she has to be rewritten here, or where you think that she needs to be overhauled or just completely changed. Okay. Mm-hmm. So at the beginning, Surge has her purpose. She knows what she wants to be. She has her worldview. That worldview is kill Sonic the Hedgehog. Okay. That worldview is stripped from her when she realizes that she's been lied to and gaslit. And so she goes pure nihilist. Nothing matters except for pleasure, or I guess hedonist. Nothing matters except for my hedonistic, sadistic, just destruction of everything around me. Okay. Mm-hmm. But then she realizes, okay, there's this little kid here who's the only person in the world that I can trust. So she's like, okay, so I guess it's not just me against the world, it's me and Kit. Okay.
Okay.
So at the so that's a change in her worldview. And now she knows, okay, I'm not fully alone, and that could be going somewhere. Okay.
Okay.
But at this point, they are subsisting in the egg base. They don't really, they're kind of just floating around. Surge still wants to like kill everyone, but she's very unfocused. She's
Mm-hmm.
wavering. She's like, "Where are we really gonna die? Like just doing this?" And that's when Clutch comes in, and then he's like, I can give you a focus again. I can give you purpose, and it's almost harkens back to Starline. Maybe this is something that she wants. Maybe this is something that she needs. I mean, like she was literally, um, what's conditioned to be dependent on and to be subservient, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, now she's following this one guy, and now as we see her now, she's a lot more pragmatic. She's willing to be in this sort of cold war with Sonic, where they kind of do these mean stares at each other. But she's a lot more focused, and I think a lot more dangerous now. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
now that she's willing to be more patient, she's developed, and now
Pause.
she.
Pause.
Okay,
Pause.
go ahead.
First off, this is not new. She's always been. She. This was already established that she would end up doing stuff like this all the way back with Starline. Not only was Starline was barely able to do it, but he was able to keep her to heal to a certain extent, even without the glove. But secondly, even after they ended up beating Starline's ass instead of just killing him right then and there, which would have been the smart thing to do, we need to drag, since we had to drag this plot out. Kit told her, no, let's wait. Let's go ahead and just have them all collect together so then we can try beating them up together. And she decided to wait. And that's why we ended up getting to issue 50. And honestly, kind of even make a case a little bit. I know. I'm not gonna make a case for that scene.
Okay,
But so
I
it's
would.
all so she's not because so again, she's always been willing, like again, that's still playing back into the main thing where she still is even though she's supposed to be this lash out, looking to try to jump out like a rash, reckless kind of character, she's always willing to listen and basically play second fiddle to someone else's plan. So that's not new for her.
Um, you might be right. Uh, then I guess I would then revise my understanding of her to say that every time she decides to be patient and actually could be a threat and actually could think ahead, it's always at the behest of someone else, whether it be Starline, whether it be Kit, whether it be Clutch. Okay.
Okay.
And now I guess I would draw that to the audience. Okay. Number four in the list of times where Surge is willing to not kill everything immediately is her being cheered on. Now she's like, okay, now I can guess something out of this.
No, 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 no,
So
no,
I
no,
guess
no,
it's
no.
just
Hold
one.
up, hold
I
up.
would call it 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is number four, and
Uh,
maybe she starts to realize. Sorry, can I just finish
yeah,
this? It'll take like 2 seconds.
yeah, go.
So number four, and maybe this is the moment where she realizes that she becomes self-aware, where she realizes, oh, okay, I have just been listening to people again and again and again and again, just constantly just floating around like and
Mhm.
so maybe this is the point where she really, like I said, she looks inside and she's like, what is my engine? What do I believe in? And maybe I don't, and this is speculation. This is the biggest stretch I'm gonna make here. I think maybe she's like, okay, I'm gonna find where I came from so I can know what to do next. And that's the last thing I'm gonna say. Okay. So go ahead.
All right. So, okay, what I was going to interrupt before was more just flavor text for what you were describing for arc, but that's
Mhm.
not my point. The main thing is that right there where you're saying, like, even okay, one, there is nothing to suggest that that scene in issue 70 where she does look at the audience and gets adoration from them is meant to be a bad thing. I
I
call
agree.
that so there's no reason to think that she's going to get any type of self-awareness and realize that she needs to stop doing that. But let's just go and say that she does, and we don't count the audience stuff.
Okay.
If that's the case, that is where her character is basically just being completely overhauled and rewritten. Because a character is not just their aesthetic; it's meant to be their worldview, their motivation, their perspective. And if you're basically having to turn and completely have to basically just give that stuff to a character over, give a character all that stuff, or basically give them all of that, you're basically, especially when they've been working so long without any of that, that is rewriting them. But even if we go, but that's not the bigger problem. My big problem is no matter what you give her, she's kind of fucked. She's kind of fucked no matter which position that you put her in. Like I said before, she's like nothing. Unless, if you're going to try to stay true to what her aesthetic is and what we've established about her up to this point, she's kind of fucked in all no matter which category you go for. And honestly, even if she does try to go and find like I'm going to go find out what my past is and try to figure that out, there is no reason that she needs to be in the story a second longer than that, because that has nothing to do with anything else going on the premise right now.
I agree. I This is all my speculation, but I will say that I think that the way, even if it was the case that Surge, if she was to have some sort of transformation, I'm not gonna say it's necessarily my thing. I think that it's really the things in the peripheral that matter, because I would argue that um Surge does have like this hedonistic and nihilistic part of her,
Okay.
but I think that there are other things she also has. She appears to have like some sort of daddy issues thing, right? Where she is like clinging on to like Starline and then Clutch. Maybe that could be explored. And she seems to have a victim complex, right? Where she thinks that, oh, the entire world is against me. And then she's like, okay, no, the entire world is against me and my buddy, right? So I think that it's these more subtle elements that can, even if she were to like totally quote unquote change, I think that those, if you stay true to things like that are in the periphery, I think that you can make it believable, and I think you can make
Well,
it
just
actually satisfying, and
well,
it
no.
wouldn't
Here's the thing.
necessarily been throwing away what came before. You know what I'm saying?
Here's the thing. Let's go and just say we stick to all everything you just said. She's meant to be sadistic. She's hedonistic. She's got daddy issues. What else?
uh what was the, oh
Nihilistic.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, wait, what was the last thing I said? She got daddy issues. Oh, victim complex.
Victim complex. I need you to explain to me how that would work in any like. I'm not saying you can't make any of those traits believable. I need you to explain to me how that would work, either as why that kind of character needs to be either a hero or a villain in this story. Like, how would you benefit from? How would a character who's written like this, who honestly, if I'm taking all those traits together, that sounds like one of the most pathetic villains if you're not playing them as, and an awful villain if you're not playing them comedically. So, what would be the point of having a character like this other than just point I have a character like this? And this is why I was stressing that you need to have a main cast, because this is what keeps you on focus and keeps you on point as a writer, because this makes sure that you keep in mind of, okay, this is what the story is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about these characters going on an adventure, doing X thing for their own motivations and for their own character arc. What characters do I need to add in that serve to benefit, challenge, or further their storyline? Nothing about what you just said about Surge would work as work either as a protagonist for either Sonic and his friends for the Restoration, and that would absolutely be awful as an antagonist, because because going with all those traits, she'd be too pathetic to fight to really put up a sincere debate over her beliefs. And we've already shown that she can't work as a good fighter, and she doesn't serve as a good challenge for anyone else in good thematic challenge for anyone else here. So what would be the point of having a character like that's supposed to be this pathetic?
Okay, so uh so sorry,
Sorry, I know
had
it
a
was a
little
lot.
trouble following. I'm sorry.
Sorry, let me. Sorry, I know I got a little long winded. Let me try that again.
Yeah,
Okay? So the character is meant to be sadistic, nihilistic, hedonistic, daddy issues, and has a victim complex, right?
yes.
What's the point? How would a character like that benefit either Sonic's story or the Restoration?
Okay. Um, Yeah, okay. So if you want me to speculate, okay. Speculating, just to put that out there, just for the sake of transparency, for the audience and stuff. Uh, I think that the biggest thing that links IDW Sonic specifically and Surge is the idea of choice. Um, Sonic, his whole thing in the IDW comics, I mean, I know everyone, you might have your own opinion about whether or not this is true to the character or whatever, but IDW Sonic specifically, he has a whole thing about choice, having people having the freedom, right? The freedom to make their own decisions and whatnot. And Surge in that, I can't remember what issue it was. It was the issue with the Dynamo Cage. She was like directly said, "I don't have a choice. Not everyone has a choice, Sonic. I don't have a choice. I am who I am, and that's just who I'm gonna be." Um, so I think that if you wanted to do something with that, maybe you could have. I want to say I'm not a professional. I'm not saying that this would be the most satisfying and it's coming off the cuff, but maybe Serge realizes that oh, maybe she tries to make a different choice, right? Maybe she's like, okay, maybe I can be a hero and blah blah blah. And then the world kind of turns against her. Maybe she makes a mistake, or people are like prejudiced against her because they think, oh, you'll always be this and you'll always be that. And maybe she realizes, yeah, they're right. I was right the first time. I can't be anything other than what I am.
Hold up, stop.
Or
Hold up.
inversely, maybe, sorry, go ahead.
See, this is what I'm talking about. Like you're kind of trying to make her own individual story try to make some kind of sense. That's not my question. My question was, how does this benefit Sonic's story, or how does it benefit the Restoration story to have a character like this?
Um, Maybe, okay, Sonic was kind of um dismissive of Surge, which makes sense because she was kind of schizo rambling when they first met. So I don't know, I maybe he could actually they could be frank with each other and he could actually truly empathize with her and realize that maybe to say that everyone has a choice to do the right thing,
Okay,
maybe
stop. Hold
that's
up.
comes
Stop.
from
Stop.
a
Stop.
place of privilege or something. I don't know.
Stop. Okay, hold up.
Go ahead.
Stop. Here's the thing. I want to try because here's the thing. One of the things that Flynn got a lot of shit for what happened in issue 50, and honestly, just
Yeah.
most of it was justified. And one of the reasons why he got shit for that conversation in 50 is because telling someone that you have a choice is one of the most condescending things you can really do. It's one of the most condescending things you can tell somebody in any situation. Because like, I'm sorry, did I not have one before I started talking to you? And who before I started talking to you, which is weird to try to tell that to anybody. But even if you want to try to tell them that tell that to Surge, and her whole thing is, I don't think I have a choice, which is already just kind of really fucking. How do I put this? It's a very self-aggrand. How do
I
I put
think
this? It's
self-aggrandizing is
no,
what
no,
he's
it's not
trying to
self-aggrandizing.
mention.
That's the reason I didn't finish that sentence. I meant more too much of a self-involved, too much of a navel-gazing kind of conversation to have in the first place. Because
Mhm.
especially for a character who has more or less been making decisions, more or less has been making decisions. It's not like she needs to be told every 5 minutes. I have to like, when can I tie my shoes? When can I brush my teeth? She's not meant to be that. Not meant to be that pedant. Meant to be like that subservient. Like that's the whole reason I pointed out her being constantly subservient to Clutch to Starline and to Kid and even the audience is that doesn't really gel with what her character's the aesthetic of her character and what the whole angry rebellious thing is supposed to be in the first place. But even if I went with that, the whole thing is supposed to be her having a conversation about how she can make a choice, with the implied conversation being you can be a choice to not be a shit person. Again, this is what I'm talking about. You have if that's supposed to be the case, and she's supposed to make the choice to not be any of those things, then that is basically rewriting everything about her. And even then, how does that benefit
Wait, sorry,
that
can you repeat that
her?
part?
How does she, as she is right now, benefit Sonic's story like that? Like that doesn't do anything for Sonic's story.
Wait, can you repeat the last sentence? Sorry, where you said he would have to rewrite a character. Why? Why would you have to? I didn't hear it.
If the whole okay, from your perspective, the whole conversation is Sonic is supposed to talk to Surge about how she has how she's supposed to be able to have a choice, and how she's
Wait, can I clarify? Can I
yes.
clarify? I think that they would have a conversation, maybe, where Sonic challenge is forced to challenge his belief, and it's like maybe it's not necessarily, it wasn't fair of me to say that everyone can help what they are. I didn't know you. I mean, obviously, I was kind of in a bad position, but I
No,
when your choices were taken from you, and yeah, and it's not, I can't necessarily say, we're all the same, me who is from a relative place of privilege, not to make it too real, but you know what I'm saying, right? That's what I uh that's what I would speculate the conversation might look like,
so
if they were to have a conversation in the first place. Yeah.
but here's the thing. So we're basically just going to okay. So that is one conversation. That's one conversation that Sonic could potentially have. I mean, in general, like, what's the benefit of having a personality like this? Having a character like this for some
I thought you said that would be how I think it would benefit Sonic's story, because yeah, I don't know, maybe with Ty, I wouldn't maybe need to think about it more, but maybe with tie a bow on the whole issue 50, whatever. Everyone has a choice, blah blah blah. Maybe Sonic could have the opportunity to be more introspective. But okay. So if you're okay, so there were two parts of your question. How would it benefit Sonic's story? And I think how would it benefit the broader world?
hold up.
So I
No, I
think
want to stay on the Sonic thing because
just the
I'm
Sonic
trying
thing.
not to. I want to get to the restoration, but I want to focus on the Sonic thing first
Okay.
because that is like one conversation, which I'm like, did we really just spend 20 issues just to have that 20 issues on this character, just to have that one talk? I'm like, but fine, whatever. We have that one conversation. What else? Like, like, at best, that's a conversation that Sonic has once and then she should fuck off. Why do we need to have a character with these personality traits in the cast on a regular basis interacting with Sonic? That's my like, what do you do after that one conversation with her? I like that wasn't just a question about one story. I just meant in general. What's the benefit of having a character like this bouncing off Sonic on a regular basis?
All right, so are you saying that I need to have two things and not one thing? I have to
I
have two
meant
stories.
a general idea, just a general
That's my general
idea, not
idea.
just one story.
That's
Just
all I got. That's all. I think that seems to be the common thread between them. That
mhm.
is this idea of choice and who has choices, and whether or not that's a fair thing to say. Um, yeah, and yeah, sorry, that's all I got. Maybe I think it's pretty good. Okay, I'll say that. I think that that by itself is okay. But and if you don't think so, then that's also fine. But I think that that's okay. It's been a pretty important part of the comics. So if and this is a hypothetical within a hypothetical, pretty much. But if that was gonna be the way that they that if that was what she contributed to Sonic's story, if that was the thing about the parts of Sonic that they wanted to examine and sort of put a bow on, I think that I think that's okay,
But here's
especially
the
for
problem.
coming up with
No,
it
no.
in like 5 minutes. Yeah,
But
go
here's
ahead.
the thing. There's a reason. Here's the thing.
Mhm.
The Sonic idea that they were trying to go for. The problem was not how dare he end up like the idea of like everyone has a choice, because at the end of the day he's right. The problem was the context and how he was having that conversation with someone where it's like, oh, you can have you can make the choice to not be a shit person because I've had to fight with plenty of people like you who just came out of nowhere to fight me, but I eventually became friends with anyway. So why don't you make the choice to not be a shit person, not be a shit person anymore to someone he's never talked to? And even if you want to make the whole point is like Sonic needs to learn empathy with someone. I'm like, why does he need to learn empathy with someone who's trying to fight him? Like that's like the core point about that scene is not that it can be rewritten. The problem with that scene was it shouldn't have happened in the first place because it's missing because Flynn, I don't know what the fuck they were trying to go for with that. I really do think I have a theory about why he ended up writing Sonic like that, but that's for a different conversation. The whole point is that does not making Sonic a twat for that conversation just to have him come back around and go, I should try to be more empathetic and understanding to people who just come out of nowhere, punch me in the face. Makes no sense. Makes little to no sense, and I'll see like what's even the point of him doing that? What's the point of him doing that for a story like this? That we need to have a story about how he needs to have empathy with people who assault him.
Okay. Um.
And here's the thing: I'm not like I
Okay.
know like the reason I'm okay. Let me
Sorry.
rephrase it.
Can you?
That's a bad question for you. Let me. I apologize for that. Here's the thing: the reason why I always end up talking about that a lot of my arguments against the series always come off speculative is because I'm looking because like it's one thing to just rip into how this is a bad idea in and of itself, and I really should try doing that more. It's just more. I'm already seeing how this is being introduced, and I can already tell how much of a trend this can go if it just follows information that we've been given at this point. And throughout this entire series, I've either have been proven right or they found new ways to make it. They either prove me right or they end up making the situation worse than I expected. Like I was basically proven 100% right when I said at the beginning, before these two even got a proper premiere in the comics, that Surge and Kit were going to be awful antagonists. We're going to be awful rivals for Sonic just because of how they're introduced, what little information we have of them, and Flynn does not have a good track record of making rival characters. And I was proven right, and made even more, and proven right. And when I end up criticizing Starline for how he does not make sense as an antagonist for Eggman or Sonic, they end up just and it makes no sense to be giving him this much attention. Again, they end up proving me right, and then just nuked him out of the story, which just made me wonder why the fuck did we even waste time with this? This is all we're gonna get out of it because it's not like it was a that good of a showcase for Eggman. Which why the fuck do we need to introduce a villain to develop the villain to set up the other villain? But it does nothing for Sonic's story. So this is again why end up coming back to the point of we need to have a central main cast that the story is supposed to be focusing on and actually introduce elements that are meant to develop and benefit those characters on their motivations and arcs. And if they are not, and elements that don't do that need to either be removed or need to be completely overhauled. Having Surge to show up for one conversation, even if that was like the best story to ever exist, would just mean that we would need to write her out, which I don't know, which would still levy the criticism of we wasted 20 issues to have one conversation with that for Sonic to go, well, maybe I should have empathy with people who jump out of nowhere and punch me in the face. Which, even without getting into that, I'm just like, did we just spend 20 issues on that? That's 20 issues on that because that means that we wasted 20 issues on a very simple thesis that could have been handled in a B plot instead of wasting 20 issues where we could have been doing literally anything else. And when it comes to, and again, Surge is like one of those characters that's gotten a lot of background to justify a position. But let's jump over to someone else. For example, why do we
Wait,
need?
wait. Can I say one last
Oh,
thing?
yeah, sorry, sure, sorry.
Um. Uh. So your question was, how would it contribute? How could it contribute to Sonic's story?
Mm-hmm.
What Surge is Surge's character traits and her like character profile? How does it contribute to Sonic's story? Um, I um I agree that it might not be the best way to solve her story. So but generally, if I wanted to like, if I'm gonna like, this is gonna be my final word on what S- Surge has to say about IDW Sonic in particular, and which is okay. If so, this is like the first thing I want to say. So I want to say
Sure.
one other thing after this. If she is gonna say something to him, that's probably gonna be the idea of choice. And maybe Sonic could just stick with it and be like, yeah, because you said that Sonic is correct. And I would agree with that. Maybe what she needs to learn is that she does have a choice. I mean, it's kind of obvious, it's pretty straightforward and not super subversive, but I think that works. So something like that. So, but just generally, I think that the thing that the question that Surge brings up and the way that ties into Sonic is whether or not people have a choice. I think that that is her utility in the story. So, but on the second point, um, I don't know. There are a few more characters out there that besides Sonic, and I know I was the one who brought it up, so I'm not putting it on you. But I can think of two other characters that could have like interesting things that could bring up like interesting conversations, right? Like Amy, right? Her compassion, like her affection, maybe I don't know, maybe Amy, if they were to go that route, she could either be someone in a long line of people who Surge is trying to use to validate herself, or maybe Amy could be like, you don't have to. Doesn't have to be transactional. I'm not here to lead you, right? And maybe Surge could come to have a more nuanced view of affection and intimacy. So, or maybe Shadow, right? Because Shadow is a
Okay.
synthetic life form or semi-synthetic life form who's created for his particular purpose, and he made his own choice. So I think that maybe he would have. I don't think those two have ever interacted. I think that if those two, you'd put them in a room together, I think that they could say something interesting to each other. I think that if it doesn't come from Sonic, I think that's his whole thing about making your own choice and all that would probably mean a lot more coming from someone who was literally made for a particular purpose, who did decide to go and do his own thing, who did make a choice and continues making choices, and maybe that could encourage her, maybe that could make her envious. I don't know, but um, I I only bring those characters up to say that I think that Surge has a lot of potential, and I guess I would disagree with. Um, I know you have a lot more of a cynical view of it, but the only purpose of me speculating to the audience, I could be totally wrong. I don't want to. Me speculating is not necessarily defense of the comics, right? They could totally mess it up. But I think that what we've been presented, I think, has a lot of potential. So that's the last thing I want to say on it. And if you want to respond to that, then that's my last word on it.
Okay. My issue with Surge, I'm not the reason why I say that she has ultimately no potential because each of those stories is basically just dragging out her ultimately making a decision about what she's supposed to be by the end of this. Because right now, like when it came to your idea about like, oh, Amy teaches her what it means to be affectionate, and Chao teaches like helps her understand what choices or whatever. I'm like, okay, we are now just dragging out and just having her take the long way around for her realizing what the fuck she's supposed to be. So we're just dragging out her story to before she ends up having to make a decision of what her motivation is, what her beliefs are, what she's who she's supposed to be as a character. And my criticism, and the reason why I still have that criticism is, I say that criticism about we basically have to rewrite her in order to do this because we're basically having to give her basic things that you're supposed to have as a character at the start. Even if you end up having to change like two of the things for a character arc, you're not supposed to have to like basically gain all of them just to start being able to be functional. And even then, you're going to have to land at some point on what she's supposed to be, because by the time even if we have her marathon through every last fucking character, at a point we're going to have to answer the question of, is she an antagonist? Is she going to be a protagonist, antagonist, anti-hero? And I've already explained why, unless they just completely overhaul her, why she fails at doing, why she would be an awful position in all three of those roles. So
Okay.
the issue,
Yeah, we can move on if you
yeah. So
want.
we can just move on from that. So I want to try exploring one other try talking about. My whole goal here was really talking. Let's see if we can just broaden back out a little bit, because my whole point here was not
Yeah,
just
sure.
to hyper focus on Surge. My point here was more talking about how all of these characters, for the differences that they have, the amount of character background that they've had, they all seem to exist either to basically justify their own existence or justify another character's existence, not not to do anything to actually benefit or help the story of the actual game characters that we came here for in the first place. And the more that these stories continue, the more it just seems like the story is trying to be more about these guys, more about their own conflicts that are um, either are still kind of stuck, more or less repeating the same thing over and over again, or don't really have much to further on in the first place. So my thing is more like, because the reason I end up focusing on them in particular is because I constantly see over again about people going, "Hey guys, we need to bring these guys into the games. They'd be so good in the games." And I know it's just like a bunch of fans who are just who are just like wanting to like just let a character they like, that they think is cute, and have to like get more recognition. But my thing is, please don't. We already have a bad enough problem with the games not having a building on story in the first place, and having way too many characters for them to be able to focus and use in the first goddamn place. Adding in more characters that are actually in a worse position story wise does not help that problem. It only makes things worse.
Okay. I want to make a comment on that.
Yes.
So I I think I would agree that they're having the OCs be kind of self-contained. It's at least noticeable, right? In a way that it could break your um suspension of disbelief. You know, you can be aware, okay, wow, a lot of these characters are very self-referential, right? They kind of just spin off and do their own thing, and it feels a little disjointed. I can agree with that, but I would like to present an alternative world that could have its own set of problems. So, and I would um, kind of direct people to Archie, or ask people to remember that, because something that really always bothered me about Archie as a kid, and I know not everyone shares this, but this is me personally, was these these OCs. I know it sounds kind of shallow. It's just these guys just like commingling with the main characters, where with the game characters, where they're like, oh wow, this guy is Sonic's girlfriend, or this is Tails's uh you know classmate in school, and they're all just equally important. And this is and oh, Tangle, she's actually SBO's teacher or something, or they're just buddies, right? And they've always been friends. What do you mean? Uh, or and it's that, to me, is kind of also awkward. It's always been kind of awkward to me, because I know it's not necessarily the fault of the writers, but to me, it can border on fan fiction if you have these characters, I don't know, just kind of
Well, okay. First
injecting
off, this
themselves
is
into these
if we're going,
dynamics. You know what I
hold
mean?
up. As someone who is a proud critic of Archie, that is first off, we're already in fanfic territory by having this many OCs where they're more the story's emotional focus than the game cast. We're already in that territory, so that's already removed. But when it comes to Archie, correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like your main problem with them introducing introducing characters like that is the retconning of it, right? Like retconning, like,
Uh,
oh yeah, these characters will always exist. They've always been in the backgrounds. We're just learning about them this second, even though we haven't really got them anywhere else, right?
uh, that that is something that compounds on it, but sorry, I don't want to make that the main point. My main point is just it can feel, and this isn't like necessarily logical or even like a point that can be argued necessarily because it is so subjective. But I'm saying it can feel kind of off to me to just see just the commingling and the uh I want to say like saying that they're all just equal and the same. I don't know. I know that sounds terrible. Hold on. The- I, it just feels weird when like your OCs are. It's not necessarily a retcon. It's not something that necessarily changes the canon. They can be introduced. They can say, "Hey, we just met this guy," but the way they inject themselves and change the dynamics and change like power scaling and stuff like that can be like irritating to me sometimes. Does that make sense?
I mean, to an extent, but you're gonna have that problem no matter which way. That those kind of problems are just gonna happen no matter which way you do when you're trying to introduce new characters. The goal should be is that when you're introducing new characters, you try to make them come off as integrated with the story as possible. Now, I'm not against the idea of introducing characters who can like change things up and be more powerful than the main characters. If the whole point is we need to motivate our main guys to actually get their shit together, because one of the problems I have with Sonic in this story in particular is that he has literally nothing to do. He has literally nothing to do other than just to meander and wait for someone else's plot to kick in. And honestly, he doesn't even seem to really be up for doing that more often, and barely have anything to do when that ends up happening. So that I would be fine with. But when it comes to, but this kind of goes back to what I said before. I'm fine with them adding new character. I'm fine with them adding new characters to the story. But the goal should be is they should be adding characters who can help to develop and explore and build on the main cast, not just to exist to have one story beat that they just end up going through over and over again, or they just end up segmenting off where they're just more in their own universe than completely disconnected from the rest of the characters. Like I would be fine, like, or having characters that really, or having individual character designs that don't really make a lot of sense. Like when Flynn first introduced the idea of Tangle, I would like as, oh, let's have a female character that Sonic can go and have adventures with and be buds with and all that kind of stuff. I was actually at the very least okay with the idea. It's like, all right, fine. I wasn't wild about the points he was making about the existing girls, but I'm like, all right, fine. You want to introduce a new girl? Let's go ahead and do that. But my problem with Tangle is one, she doesn't really serve as a good full. She does not serve as a good character complement to Sonic to any degree, other than just kind of sharing his same kind of rashness. And they don't really contrast in any major ways. Nor have they really been on any major adventures go together. At best, it was the urban warfare story, and even then, that wasn't them following their own ambitions. That was them having to basically be directed by Jewel in order to go on to a plot, which is already a bad sign in the first place for an adventure protagonist. But the main thing is Tangle hasn't really had any type of personal relationship with Sonic since like issue 24, 25, and we haven't really gotten a chance to like build or do anything in our relationship. Instead, she's been going more and more into just being in the girl group for the restoration and more or less being their own thing instead of like trying to intermingle the cast. So, and
Wait,
Whisper,
can I say something on that? Sorry,
sure,
once you're done,
no,
I'll
no, go
jump
for
in.
it.
Okay. I I think that this is a systemic problem. I agree. I think that this is an issue. It's something that I noticed that these characters are doing their own thing, like I said, but I think that this is a problem of the this separation between the games cast and the comics cast is being created like seemingly by Sega because these characters they don't show up in the games, right? I okay,
Hold up.
if I
Well,
could just say one last thing about
uh-huh.
what I was saying before about comic characters being treated like they're equal to the game characters. I think my my rule in my mind is that once you show up in the games, then you can do whatever you want. You can be more powerful than Sonic, and you can be like smarter than Tails, whatever. I don't care. You can be buddy buddy with the Chaotix. It doesn't really matter to me. I think that once you show up in the games, then you can you are free once you're actually fully integrated with the canon. I think that does give you the freedom to be able to, move them around and have meaningful
Okay,
dynamics, right?
two
And have
problems.
them
Hold up.
change. I
Hold up.
think so.
I want
Go
to
ahead.
deal with something that you said earlier first about this being a second thing. Okay,
Yeah.
this is something. This is ironically one of the main problems I have with a lot of with Flynn, mainly from his fans. Not
Oh my
every bad
goodness.
thing that happens in the comics is because of Sega. Not every most weird thing that
Okay,
happens.
wait. Okay, look, if we're gonna argue about things that are Sega's fault, then I'm gonna call it Sega's fault. I'm not saying that every
How is
single
this?
thing is
But that's the
Sega's
thing.
fault.
How is this Sega's fault?
I think this thing is like the fact that the comic characters have to like sort of build around like the Sonic world. You can't okay, look, here's an example. Let me be specific. You can't have like Tangle saying, I'm gonna join the Chaotix. I quit the Diamond Cutters. I'm bored of that. I joined the Chaotix. Because if they show up in the games and then Tangle's not there, that's gonna be weird. You can't do that. You know what I'm saying? You can't
Okay.
have I don't know, you can't have Lanolin join Gun because Gun is not a thing anymore in the games. They I don't think they want to touch that anymore. You know what I'm saying? Those are specific. I know these are kind of silly examples, but those are specific ways that in which you can't have these sort of meaningful dynamics that actually mean anything. You can have them be friendly, you can have them talk to each other, but they can't actually do anything that matters. The comic characters can't actually have any change on the games cast because they're not allowed in the games right now, supposedly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Which one is a
that's
good?
specifically why I would say that
But that's here's the
sorry, go ahead.
thing. That's where here's the thing though. No one's been asking for that. I'm not asking for that. I'm not
I'm
asking for them to
asking
join
for
the
the
chaotics. The whole criticism I'm having right now is that they're not that they aren't changing Sonic's character from they're not having like a complete profound impact on Sonic and who he is and complete overhaul of what his personality is. I wouldn't expect for that to happen for
but that's
multiple
not what I
reasons.
said. That's not what I
Yeah.
said. They can't okay, you can't have like Jewel be like, actually I'm gonna move to Angel Island because that's not gonna show up in the games. They're not
I know,
allowed in
but
the
that's
games
not.
now.
Hold on. This is what I was talking about. I'm not asking for them to have some profound, get too
That doesn't
involved.
change his whole personality. They just can't be around in a way that really matters. You know what I mean? They're not a part of the team. They're trapped in restoration. They're stuck there. That's where they put the things that they put the things
Well,
that they
no,
don't want
but
to show
no,
up in
no.
the
But
games.
that's if anything, that's my. Hold on, we're working a little back. Hold on, we're working a little backwards here. First off, we're working off several assumptions. First off, we're assuming the idea that that they all have to be stuck in the all have to be stuck in the restoration. First, even if that's true, that's not the biggest. That would not be a problem if the restoration had an actual clear purpose for existing or why we need to focus on them, focus on the restoration, other than the fact that that's where all the OCs are.
I don't
Secondly,
like restoration. Bring back gun. I'm hip. I agree
but
with you.
even if they
Bring
were
back
no, but here's the problem. Even if it was gun is not helpful in this situation. If anything, that would be gun is not going to fix the core problem because again, this goes back to what I was saying before. Who's supposed to be the focus of this story? If it's supposed to be Sonic and Co., then we should be building characters who can work off them to a certain degree. Yes, they can't be tied at the hip. They can't be tied at the hip all the fucking time. But you should have something of a general cast that Sonic can interact with on a regular basis. That if they, even if you want to try to sound like this is 100% in the games, this is 100% canon, everything's going on here, then all you got to do is just make sure that like, yeah, there's an explanation why they aren't around each other all the fucking time. Like maybe they
but
have
that's
a they,
convoluted.
no, it's no. That is basically no.
Oh,
It's not. That's
Tangle got
literally what's
sick.
happening with
She
them.
got a
All I'm at,
cold.
no. That is
Oh, go ahead.
literally all I'm saying right now. The only difference I'm saying right now from what's happened in the comics from versus what I'm saying is that I want there to actually be some type of just having more focus on how they're supposed to interact with Sonic and Co. instead of them having to make a whole bubble that we have to drag Sonic into. And there's no reason to believe that that's the reason why they're segmented like this, because we already have. I can go through Discord at some point, but we already have Sega. Oh, Stanley, and I do believe Flynn at some point saying they wanted to focus more on these guys so much because they don't have to go through Sega to get so many different approvals, which I cannot feel that sorry for them about when I see the stuff that they do with these guys and I go, yeah, y'all need to be touching the game characters, because if this is what you guys want to try doing with anything you guys want to be doing with the game cast, like if any of these ideas were for Surge is something that they have for Shadow, or anything that they were trying to do with these two or something that they had in mind for Blaze, no, they don't need to be touching the game characters, because this is not only incredibly myopic conflicts that just lead them into having to deal with the same conflict over and over again, it doesn't tie them back in with the rest of the cast or move any other general story plot forward to any degree. So I'm like, what are we doing other than just repeating the same theme for them over and over again?
Okay, wait. Can I say something?
Shoot.
Okay, if you're saying that these restrictions do exist and they do result in the
no. Hold up. I need to pause real quick because I need to make my wording very clear here, because I've seen people misinterpret me about this. Mm-hmm. Do I think Sega has restrictions about what they can and can't do with the characters? Absolutely. It would be incredibly weird and off-brand for any company to not have some type of restriction like that. That is a foregone. I absolutely agree with that.
Oh, sorry. 1 second.
The problem.
Wait, dude. Give me like 2 seconds. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Sorry for this, guys. I'm assuming Mayday is having to deal with something with his dog or something. Give us a sec.
Yo, I'm back. Hey, sorry. What were we talking about?
Okay, so do I think Sega has restrictions about what the characters can and can't do, what the writers can or can't do with the characters? Absolutely. The question is always, the reason why I'm always so, the debate has never been about whether Sega has any type of restrictions. The question is, are they so restrictive towards them that prevents them from being able to be functional, that prevents them from being able to do anything with the characters? And honestly, I'm going to have to go with, and honestly, I'm just going to go and say no. I think they end up having so much of a problem with them because they end up pitching ideas that Sega just kind of goes no, because both of them have a habit of just coming up with stories that they think are kind of fun, but have no respect to anything that's supposed to be going on with the main cast. And they end up just having with what the main characters are like. And they just end up going, well, I'll just make my own OCs and they'll just deal with the conflicts and the game goes to be time for the side, because they're more interested in just handling these one particular premises or ideas without really taking into consideration how they're supposed to work with the characters. Because both Flynn and, sadly enough, Stanley aren't really good character writers. Flynn is more focused on seems to be more focused on like just doing premises and horror themes. And Stanley, honestly, I don't really know if she likes writing the game characters, because I believe she had the same problem in Ghosts from the Future, where she was more interested in working on her OCs than working with the game cast. So
I actually read that comic when I was a kid. I was surprised to see her working on like the Archie comics. I was like shocked, but I was like, dang, because I used to watch that on DeviantArt. Sorry. Okay.
Oh,
that was it. Yeah. Oh, can I say something? I didn't mean to torpedo your point.
No. I was actually done. Go for it. I was done. Okay. Go for it.
Okay. I will say this. If you're saying that the writers write the OCs, they play with them more, or just use them more because it's more fun for them and they don't want to go through restrictions. That's something they've said. Then sure, that's inarguable if they've literally said that. So sure, I agree with that. I would only say that I think also that the fact that they can't show up in the games, right, and even just the fact that you do have to go through lots of red tape to make these meaningful interactions happen.
Hold on.
Wait, can I just finish?
Oh no, go for it.
I would say that Sega contributes to it. Whether it's you can say it's a good thing, you can say they are incompetent and they cannot, that they have shown that this red tape is required. Sure, but I would say that it's detrimental to the things I want to see um, in the story, and to your question of having these interactions that matter, having the cat the comics cast and the games cast actually be intertwined and actually like do stuff together. I think that these sort of restrictions, even if they are useful or helpful or necessary, they have this secondary effect of causing this problem or at least contributing to this problem. That's all I'm saying.
But no, but here's the thing though. You keep assuming that Sega is putting up the wall between the two, which we have nothing to we have nothing to suggest that that's the situation. I need to pull this up, but the reason why these guys are so segmented from them, honestly, as far as I can tell, it just seems to be a choice on Flynn and Stanley's half, not because Sega's telling them to do that. And if that's the case, then that's the case, especially since they're getting segmented into something that has less and less to do with anything that's going on with the Gamecast, then they shouldn't be getting focused, and they should just be that just feeds back to my initial point. They should just be written out because the story is the story. If they're especially if they're not going to show up in the games, then the story should not be focusing on them to the amount or the degree that they have been, like giving Surge and Bell over a year, Surge, Kit, and Bell over a year of attention. If the whole if they are only just going to stick in their own bubble and they aren't going to interact properly with the game cast, which is what we're here for, then they do need to be written out because this is what the story should be about, and you should be adding things that contribute to their story, adding things that should be contributing to their story, not just introducing random characters so you can do your own premises in your own way that you can't use the game cast for, because that is missing the plot, that is missing the point, which
Wait, so sorry, go ahead.
yeah, this is my last thing. This is what
Yeah.
contributes to the main problem that IDW Sonic has. It has no commitment to having any central premise, focus, main characters in any way. It just kind of wants to fart. It just kind of wants to fart around and just do whatever random ideas it has without any respect to to trying to do anything with its own story. And that's not Sega's problem. That's not because of Sega's. That's not Sega's fault. That's the writers not. That's the writers having their priorities misaligned.
Okay. So I'm going to respond to 2 points you
Mm-hmm.
made. So the first point you made is that I have no evidence that the Sega mandates is what's causing this segmentation. And to my knowledge, there's no mandate that we know of that says that has the words comic characters cannot commingle with game characters. So I can see that. But I think something that we know to be true
Mm-hmm.
is the idea that the comics are not allowed to change the dynamics in a way that it bumps against the games too much.
Mm-hmm.
It can't say that. I just an extreme example, but it can't say that like Knuckles died or something. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Because that needs to happen in a game, right? Because that's the mo the way that most of the audience interacts with the Sonic franchise.
Mm-hmm.
So I would, so what I'm doing is I'm extrapolating that a smaller form of that is the interaction between the characters, interactions that I would think matter. Um, so I think that this sort of broader general mandate trickles down and affects the ability for comic book characters to have meaning. I keep on saying that meaningful. That doesn't mean I don't mean that as a buzzword. I'm just hoping that you get what I
Yeah, I
mean.
get it.
So
I'm not gonna get you for that.
yeah,
Go
yeah.
for it.
All right. So meaningful interactions with the game cast. Um, so and so yeah, that's what I mean by Sega mandates. And you can respond to that and disagree if you want. But the second thing that I wanted to respond to is that, or I guess a question. I'll write it down so you don't have so you don't have to hold that in your mind if you want to respond to the first thing I said.
Mhm.
But you said that it would be better. Or I think this is what you said. Correct me if I'm wrong. It would be if these characters, these comic book characters, can't actually meaningfully affect the dynamic and they don't actually contribute that much to the canon, right? Then, and they just kind of do their own thing, then they should be phased out. They shouldn't exist. Or if it would be better
No,
if they did
so
exist.
I want to catch you right there real quick.
Go ahead.
Meaningful, like here's the thing.
Wait,
I
by
didn't
the
say
way, sorry,
meaningful. I mean just
like I said one thing? I think I'm gonna go in like 15 minutes. So
no,
I
no, that's
guess,
fine. No, we can make this last 5 minutes because
yeah,
I need
five
to go
minutes.
too.
Yeah, yeah, all right, cool,
Yeah, but we can make this last 5 minutes.
cool.
Let's start with the second thing first, which I honestly think really ties back into both. The issue I have when it comes to the game cast interacting with the IDWOCs, when I say their relationships, I am not asking for Sonic to have a complete upending of who he is as a person or any type of like hardcore rewriting of who he is. I'm basically just going, hey, you want to add in a new character? Add a new character that at the bare minimum, the relationship between Sonic is the relationship they have with Sonic and potentially other characters in this cast not only is meant to be entertaining on its own, but it's a different kind of relationship that we haven't seen in the story up to this point, at least or shown in a different way. I am not asking for this is very bare bones. Literally, even fucking Murder of Me was able to do this with Tails and Barry. I am not trying to set some high bar for what I'm expecting for these characters. I am looking for, hey, you want to introduce a new character? Maybe introduce someone who can be like a wingman or a bro to Sonic that you can't really get with Knuckles or you can't really get with Knuckles or with Tails. Give him a different character that does something to help give an idea about what this story that helps that helps to contribute to whatever the core premise and what the main story of Sonic is supposed to be for this comic line. That is not something that's going to be prevented by any form of mandates unless they're being incredibly uptight, which we have not shown. Which if they were that uptight, we wouldn't even see that they wouldn't even allow them to have new characters in the first place. So that's clearly not the case here. The issue is so to come back to your first question again, the main core reason I have such a problem with the IDW characters is because they end up contributing to the main problem that this comic has, which is it doesn't want to have a clear premise about what it wants to be about. It doesn't want to have a clear main cast. It just kind of wants to have its own random ideas every 5 minutes, random ideas every 5 minutes, and just drag the not only the game cast but the OCs through whatever random idea that they have, and uh, and shit fall where they may when it comes to how the characters end up coming out or how they end up being written in the process. Because the process just seems to be there's no clear vision for what the story wants to be. We're just looking to be decent fill, just to look to be remotely passable filler in between game releases, and that means that this is one of the least defined stories overall. Like to wrap up my position here, this is the reason I have more respect for Prime in comparison to IDW, because while I have a lot of problems with Prime, especially for the weird guilt arc they tried giving Sonic, I respect the series more because it has a clear idea about what the story wanted to be about. It has a clear focus about who the main focus characters were supposed to be for that story, and end up following through with those ideas and treated the characters with some amount of respect when it came to having their motivations and stories play out. This comic doesn't do that. It instead treats the characters more like tools and just has them do whatever they need to do in order to push them forward to get them to a particular position, even when that position doesn't make any sense or has nothing but negative ramifications for both the characters in the story. So, and if the SEGA was meant to be so uptight that these guys aren't able to give their own story aren't able to have their own stories tie back into the game characters, but which again would still be weird because again these guys have had their own quote unquote storylines have quality aside have had their own storylines. So if Sega was meant to be that uptight, they wouldn't have even gotten that. But if they were meant to be so uptight that they're not allowed to add to the game characters, and the game characters are the ones who are the ones the story in theory is supposed to be about, then these guys need to be cut, and these guys either need to be cut or reduced, and we need to make the story about them, not these guys, not the OCs. That makes sense?
That doesn't make sense. So do I get the final word, or is
just explain, just so we don't end up going to another discussion. We can handle this later, but just answer me how this doesn't make sense. So we can wrap up on that.
No, what you said made sense.
Oh.
I think I didn't fully understand your point. I think that I was accidentally presenting a false dichotomy, where I was like either these characters they don't interact at all, and they're just totally sectioned off into their own place, or they're totally intertwined in each other's lives, and they're all have their own, they're joining each other's teams and affecting each other's existence and blah blah blah. Where I think that what you're asking for is just at the bare minimum, just having some sort of interesting, unique dynamic with at least Sonic, right?
Without getting too pedantic, yes.
Okay. I think that's fair. That's fair to ask for, and I would say, yeah, that is probably mostly on the writers. Because I don't think that would necessarily bump into any mandates that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
So, I would probably. Sorry, can I?
Yeah, no, I was saying you got the last word. Go for it.
Yeah. So I would, if I had more time, I would probably think about it and argue that they do have interactions that we haven't seen before. But just if I accept what you're saying is true, that their interaction with Sonic aren't as developed as they could be or as unique as they could be, sure, I would say that maybe just to the audience to keep in mind that a lot of the dynamics that we see right now, if I'm going to look at Tails and Amy and Knuckles, right? These dynamics were formed over years, right? I mean, Sonic didn't start off saying that, oh, you're a knucklehead and you're a gullible, Knuckles. That came from years of adventuring together. I'm treating them as real people, but years of just figuring out of just experiences, right? And adventures together.
No, that's
I think. Okay, wait. Okay. To develop their dynamic, that I think, if I'm talking about Knuckles, I think that made Knuckles more than just a cool rival. I guess I would personally, I would probably cut the comic a little bit of slack, just because, if only just because you can't do every single interaction at the same time, right? You can't have Sonic interacting with every single OC that you have, and you can't give it the space that it needs, because this is like a monthly comic that hasn't reached its conclusion or maybe even its middle yet. So, and I guess I'm just appealing to my feeling of hope, I guess, optimism, my feeling of potential in these characters, that these relationships that we're looking at, and this is, I think, the nature of comics, it is really a snapshot in time, and things have the opportunity to develop and grow and change. Yeah, I guess that's my last word.
All right, we'll go ahead and end on that for now. Thank you very much, Mayday, for showing up, coming here to discuss the IDW characters with me. You go ahead and tell people where they can find you.
At Art Mayday, Twitter, or X or whatever. Um,
It's
and
Twitter. It's
Kara.
Twitter.
Yeah. Yeah, Twitter, X, I like talking about Sonic, big Sonic fan, big, big Ian Flynn stan, big IDW stan. They could call me IDW for I dig the writers. So yeah, if you don't like that, then come to the Mayday Art Mayday uh, station, all right, and say what you got to say. So yeah,
All right then. Thank you very much, Mayday, for showing up, and hope you to see you next time, and see you later. As well as thank you guys for showing up to listen to our debate, and I hope you and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Feel free to like and subscribe as well. All right, but I will see you guys later. And Mayday, thank you very much for showing up. All right.
all right, thanks for having me.
All right.
All right, peace.